Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, Ryan Kutscher, who is an award-winning writer, creative director, and the founder of Circus Maximus, a branding, innovation, and advertising agency for any business that wants to build the king of brand consumers actively seek out. And welcome to the podcast, Ryan.
Hey, man. What's up? Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you. Today we're going to be talking about the brand narrative process. You're going to be enlightening us on that and how all of this can help an e-commerce brand, increase their sales. That's really kind of the bottom line of our discussion. But, before we do get into all that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and, specifically how you got into what you're doing today?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, kind of by accident, I went to college in Virginia. I went to William & Mary. I studied economics. Not really sure what what I was going to do with that, but thought I could go into some sort of a business, and discovered advertising is almost by accident, really, at the school. There was a class that was taught my senior year. It was a 1-credit class, and it met once a week, and it was taught by a creative director that had been living and working in New York during sort of like the heyday, 70s, 80s, kind of a Don Draper type guy. And gotcha. At my school, that was the business school was primarily focused around accounting, which was not my thing. And yeah, kind of remember him walking in and saying like, I'm the guy that came up with Chevrolet's Heartbeat of America campaign. And I was like, that's cool. I think I'm going to do that. And that was it. So from there, I ended up going to advertising school in Miami, which was great because Miami's fun. And then just as fate would turn out, there was a very fast-growing, kind of notorious agency in Miami that I left the ad school to go work at, and that's kind of how I got my start in the business.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's awesome. So it sounds like you've kind of been around for a little while and gotten your feet wet in a variety of different areas.
We lived through a few different iterations, from the web years to the social years, now to the AI years. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. I was telling you before we got going. I guess I got started in the web years, kind of right after the web was really kind of taking shape in about the year 2000. And so, yeah, I like that kind of breakdown of the eras. It's the web years, the social years. Now we're in the AI years, and it'll be interesting to see what's after AI. Well, I guess after AI, we've got the
someone. Said, what's going to be after AI is not going to be us. It's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. We'll probably be long gone. But it seems like this whole metaverse virtual world is probably kind of the next iteration that, everybody's excited about, especially with.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, especially with Apple's, announcement of their Apple Vision Pro device. And so I think that's really I think they're ushering in this whole new era, I think.
That's one of those. Is that your take on it? Does it feel like are you having a lot of conversations around like the metaverse and sort of virtual spaces?
I am. I still think it's still early, of course. And I think them kind of putting it out there, that product at that price point, obviously, once they get it out there, it's not going to get an immediate widespread, distribution globally, of course, because of that price point. We're at $3,500 for that device. And so, I think what it is it's kind of warming up the public's consciousness and perception of this type of technology, getting people used to it, getting people, the ability to kind of visualize them using this, what they can do in this world. And so at the same time, I think the brands and companies that are going to be taking advantage of it, I think right now they're getting their ducks in order. Yeah, you better believe it for sure. I think they're doing some things to make sure that once the whole world starts participating in this kind of metaverse, if you call it that, that their presence is there. It's kind of like the early days of the web, where everybody was rushing to get a web presence, to get a website and get that going. And it's like, if you didn't have it, you're going to be left out. And I think it's going to be the same thing.
It's funny, man, because like last year and maybe a little bit the year before, the metaverse during the pandemic was like, people were buying real estate in the metaverse. Yeah. NFTs were crazy popular. And then it seemed like they kind of crashed and faded. And I don't know that I felt personally, and I'm no visionary, with that kind of stuff. But like, I was like, I don't know about all this. Obviously, if Apple's throwing their hat in the ring, maybe it means something. But you've had like Magic Leap, and Oculus and Google Cardboard, and it always just seems kind of gimmicky to me. Whereas gotcha. As opposed to AI, where the second you use ChatGPT, you're like, are we allowed to swear on your podcast?
Yeah, knock yourself out.
You use AI and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Whereas whenever I've used like the virtual reality, I'm like, I don't know. Right. Video games, I don't know, but I'm not much of a gamer, so I could be way wrong on that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not at that level where like you said, when ChatGPT came out, I mean, we were like, we're walking around with their mouths hanging open, like, wow, what the heck, what's going on with this?
ChatGPT showed up, and it was like, shit, I better learn how to be an electrician or like a plumber or something.
Right.
It's no longer my choice.
Right, replace everyone's job. But we'll see. Like I said, I think it's still early. I think all of this, even the NFTs, like you're saying, and all of these different things that are going to be contributing to this whole metaverse, I think the push for it, because like you said, it kind of faded back. You don't hear too many things about these NFTs.
So it's a lot of push of it that you can get on discount right now. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, really? Oh, okay, gotcha. But I mean, I think the push of it was really just to get it out there. They kind of knew the whole framework for all of this was not ready yet, but it was more of just getting it out there, getting it in the consciousness, and getting people used to it, getting people accustomed to the idea of what they can do in these digital assets. So
did you use the Apple one? Is that even possible? Do they have are they at Apple stores yet?
No, the Apple one, no. It's not going to be released until early 2024. That's their date on it. And so, like I said, it's really early, and them putting it out there is really more just kind of just drumming up the interest, getting people accustomed to what they can do. And, we'll see. And, like anything, of course, it has that high price point, but most likely they're going to, probably shortly after they release it, have a non-pro version, which will be probably like half the cost. And so, they know what they're doing.
We'll see. I mean, people.
Yeah, we sure will, man. Well, yeah, it's interesting.
If people want to go back to the office, I don't know if we're going into the metaverse or what that means, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, but we sure will. Well, yeah, it's awesome. But as far as today, Ryan, I think I want to kind of start off with, as I mentioned, we're talking about the brand narrative process. I want to see if you can really just kind of define what that is. What is the brand narrative process? How would you define it?
The brand narrative process is basically like, if you think about a brand, or maybe through the framework of a story, maybe you've I'm reading Harry Potter right now because I was like, I just need something that's not nonfiction. I need a break. So you think about,
I hear you.
Like a novel or something like that. Maybe you would start, before you wrote the novel, you would write an outline for the novel, and you would describe the characters, and you would describe the plot, and you would describe the setting, and you would kind of block out kind of some of the basics that would be the framework for what that story would be about. That's what the brand narrative is. So if you're a brand, we like to think of it as like, what's your mission or purpose? Like that could be your plot. Or what's your persona? That's you as thinking about yourself as a main character. What's your positioning? How to why am I different from the things that exist today in the mind of the consumer? What are
Mm-hmm.
the topics of authority? What are those subjects that I talk about a lot and kind of credibly own? What's my
Mm-hmm.
tone of voice? What's the language? How do I speak? What's kind of my vibe? And what are my truths? Like, what are the values that my brand stands for? Uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so that's
it
kind of
makes
the brand narrative process is defining those things.
okay, gotcha. Now, as far as this is concerned, why is this really essential for e-commerce businesses to be able to do this?
I think it's important for any brand, e-commerce in particular, to kind of have to create a sort of sense of meaning in the mind of your consumer, to
Yeah.
understand really who you're for and what you're all about. Like a lot of people start businesses without much of a plan, but it's a
Mhm.
lot easier when you have one. And I think
Yeah.
it kind of it sets up the blueprint and the roadmap for what your brand is going to do and be in the world. And that
Mhm.
helps you go to market with a very clear, concise, and compelling story. I think it indicates to your consumer, your target consumer, who you are, what you're all about. I think it makes things easier to align your internal team because everyone has a shared
Yeah.
understanding of the company that they're working for. So it does a lot of
Mhm.
things both internally and externally that I think make your life a lot easier. Makes your marketing easier, it makes
Right.
recruiting easier, it makes storytelling easier, it makes product
Mhm.
roadmaps easier
Yeah.
if you have it really well clearly defined.
Yeah, that's great. And that makes total sense. And now speaking of marketing, when you do have this brand narrative, clearly defined as a business owner, if I'm listening to this, I'm like, okay, that's great. Now, how do I, weave this into our whole marketing strategy, which, the end result, what we're trying to do is drive customer engagement. We're trying to drive loyalty. And then of course, ultimately, grow the business and the sales.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the marketing funnel is fairly broad, right? So that could include
Yeah.
everything from packaging to your website or your social media content or your content marketing. So, like one example might be, well, let's work kind of traditional to maybe less traditional, right? So, one could
Mhm.
be most people. You talked about Apple before, right? Most
Mhm.
people that follow marketing probably remember the Apple commercial that was to the crazy ones. It was a Super Bowl
Mhm.
commercial that ran. It was like it had Einstein in it, and
Yeah.
it was to the crazy ones, the ones who think different, and it sort of
Mhm.
positioned that brand platform and said, "Hey, here's what we are all about. This is our
Mhm.
anthem. We're for this kind of a person that thinks this kind of a way, that has these kind of a values." So that's one way that it shows up in your marketing, and that would be like a kind of a traditional television spot. But maybe for like e-commerce marketers, like maybe I just had a baby 2 weeks ago. I'm a new dad and I need a lot of information. And maybe as an e-commerce brand that caters to new dads, you are kind of solving a lot of problems with content marketing in the form of a blog or emails, right? So like I
Mhm.
ordered these whatever these particular napkins are. I guess they have like silver fibers in them, so they're disinfectant and it's a lot safer for a
Gotcha.
kid. But if I'm the marketer
Right.
of this, maybe it's like, oh, I'm all about equipping dads with the information they need to be the most informed and capable fathers they need to be. It's one of our values.
Mhm.
Therefore, my blog content is going to be all about that. It might not be about our product, it might be about other information that helps dads feel confident and be great dads. So
Yeah.
that's another way that it can inform, having that narrative defined helps really kind of identify, well, what is the content that we're going to be creating in our blog or email follow up or social media. So it's like an organizing principle that helps you
Mhm.
generate content for each
Yeah.
channel that builds back to that brand story.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, one of the questions that I kind of have now, and thinking, kind of putting myself in the shoes of an e-commerce business owner. Let's say I'm a business owner and my brand, let's say I have a kind of a diverse product line where I'm covering a variety of different demographics, different generations, and so I need to be able to hit a variety of social channels. So let's say I've got, let's say I'm selling the clothes, but I have a young children's line, but then I have an adult line, I have a women's line. Let's say I'm covering kind of a variety of areas here. How do you kind of maintain a consistent narrative when you're talking to different audiences that are, different age groups and in different generations? Is there kind of a common theme that you kind of use to kind of thread the narrative all together and make sure it's cohesive across all of them?
Well, I think it might come back to, when we were talking about the brand narrative earlier, maybe we talked about values, right? So like maybe one of your values is about helping families navigate their growing pains. So you make things for mom and you make things for grandma and you make things for the kids. So there is kind of a consistent theme there that's articulated in the brand narrative that might inform how our content for these different audiences is in some way related. But it can be really tough. I mean, to be honest with you, like I'm trying to think of like an example of a brand that might live up to what you said, Old Navy, or like, I think the brand narrative might also be valuable in sort of identifying like, all right, hey, use that example. Are we too broad? Do we need to be selling stuff to mom, grandma, uncle?
Yeah.
Or have we spread ourselves too thin and therefore we've created a marketing challenge for ourselves that's too wide to solve? You have to be so tactical, particularly in e-commerce marketing and with the ways that iOS and all that stuff has changed. You have to be so keenly aware of your core consumer and where they are and what they want to see that it could be challenging to kind of want one message to work for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point. That could definitely get a brand to kind of maybe rethink, the different product lines that they have. Because, obviously there's going to be top sellers. You're going to have certain products that are going to be outselling others. And then, with that in mind, I mean, looking at everything, if you were trying to keep a consistent narrative across all of them, maybe maybe it doesn't make sense, like you said, to offer to, let's say that younger demographic. Maybe you're not getting too much. Maybe it doesn't make sense to do any type of marketing or campaigns on TikTok, for instance, because maybe your products on the younger demographic side are maybe only, let's say, 5-10% of your business. Maybe it's not much at all. Yeah. And so, I mean, that could definitely help you kind of fine tune that narrative and focus it in more. So that's a great point. I'm always a huge advocate of kind of learning from lessons and the mistakes made. And what I wanted to see is what are some common mistakes that you've seen that e-commerce brands have made when it comes to creating their brand narrative? And is there anything that they can do to avoid these things?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely made many mistakes myself. I mean, I think the one that you just said is maybe being too broad and not knowing who you are for. That's a super common one. And I think particularly like the performance marketers out there could probably relate to that, where, you're doing interest targeting and you're trying to figure out like, who is this really kind of resonating with? Being a little too generic or too broad is probably a big, big mistake. Not having a differentiated story to tell and product is another one, where it's just like, you don't have a real position. We're for everybody. Well, that means you're kind of for nobody, so that's where like maybe the brand positioning component of the brand narrative might help. Other mistakes, not having a strong media strategy. So like you kind of pointed out, like, are we going to market live with Google and Facebook? Or are we going to make more of an organic play with TikTok? There's so many channels and so many ways to do e-commerce now. Maybe you want to be focused on Amazon, or do you want to be a direct-to-consumer brand and own that relationship? I think figuring that out, or at least having a strong idea of what you want it to be, is good, because the tactics that might work for an Amazon brand on the Amazon platform may not be the same as the ones that are going to be really successful on direct-to-consumer, Instagram, Facebook, and trying to probably not dilute your marketing spend by trying to do everything. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like a handful of things that we've kind of dealt with.
Yeah, yeah, and those are some good points. A lot of times you mentioned, lastly, you were mentioning, diluting your brand with just like a bunch of marketing spend across a lot of different campaigns, or even, I mean, not campaigns, but marketing channels. I see this a lot because a lot of times businesses, and especially because of all of these various social media channels, there's so many, there's more and more coming out, all the time. I think brands have the tendency to have that whole kind of FOMO reaction when it comes to the latest channel, and they feel like, okay, if I'm not on here, if I'm not on TikTok, I'm missing out. But it just may not be right for your brand. Are the demographics there for you, for it to worthwhile and worth the budget there? And then I see a lot of companies just throwing money across all of these things, and it doesn't make sense. I understand you do have to test when you're doing any type of marketing and see what the results are, and then if it gets any type of return, then yeah, maybe double down, or if not, pivot. But yeah, a lot of times, I see it just across the board where people are just kind of throwing money, at a lot of these things and not really being strategic with it.
Yeah. I mean, knowing your category, knowing what works, know your business model. Like you mentioned e-commerce, but there's a lot of brands out there that might be a split. They might do some e-commerce. They might have some bricks and mortar. There's different qualities. Like maybe you're an alcohol and spirits brand, and most of your sales are coming from like what we would call on-premise, or like either in a bar, or like, let's say you're a big bar brand. Your social presence is going to be really different. A clothing brand that's trying to get you to click through and make a sale online. So
Yep.
I think you really have to have that categorical knowledge of how does your pipeline operate. We've seen people waste a lot of money. A lot of big brands waste a lot of money,
Right.
kind of playing someone else's playbook, thinking that's going to work for me, and it doesn't.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, because I think from the mindset of an e-commerce brand, they're looking at these other companies, these other brands that are larger and that are spending, millions and millions of dollars on marketing and ad campaigns, and they're like, okay, if I just do what they're doing, it'll work for me. But that's not always the case, because they have a whole different customer persona, profile, demographics they're going after, and there's a lot of factors as to the decisions that they make. So yeah, that's
And I'm not like, my background is really more in the storytelling, the narrative, kind of coming up with that framework. I'm not like a deep performance marketer, but certainly we engage with those folks, and the combination of like when you get the really great story plus the right media mix together is where the magic happens. But there really isn't like an answer. You have to find your answer as a brand, and find the way that it works for you with your customers and so forth. I think that's one of the misconceptions, and I've fallen guilty of this too, trying to find like the blueprint that's going to work for every brand, and it's really it's not out there. You kind of have to figure it out for yourself.
For sure. I mean, it would make our jobs a lot easier if there was just that blueprint that you could just apply across every brand. But
do this.
Yeah, exactly. Do this, follow these steps, you're good to go. But we wish it was that easy. Well, Ryan, as we get ready to wrap things up, I wanted to see if you could share some examples of any successful brand narratives in the e-commerce space overall, and what makes them stand out specifically.
Oh, I think just from a conversation I was having earlier today, I guess I was sort of primed. Like, are you familiar with Magic Spoon?
No, I'm not. What exactly is that?
Magic Spoon is a cereal brand.
Okay.
It's a direct-to-consumer cereal brand that might now be what they call clicks to bricks. But Magic Spoon evokes a lot of like the sugary cereals that we probably had as kids, Lucky Charms and all that stuff, Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Yeah.
But they've kind of reformulated it, higher protein, lower sugar. So it's kind of like, it gives you that sort of nostalgia of those things that we ate growing up. But now as adults that we know we probably shouldn't eat.
Right.
And they've been a terrific, I think, e-commerce success story, because consumer packaged goods and food and e-commerce sometimes don't mesh that well, right? Because you always want to like
Hmm.
taste it and try it, and that's a really hard thing to
Exactly.
do. So it's
Right.
usually a grocery store channel. But I think the Magic Spoon kind of nostalgia and brand vibe, and kind of like sort of some of the softer stuff that we were talking about from the brand narrative, the way that it makes me feel, plus their e-commerce execution is definitely a success story. I think they're over $100 million brand. I mean, maybe, and that's hard to do. I mean, that's hard to do in the food
Mhm.
world. A lot of food brands maybe
Yeah.
have like 3% sales
Mhm.
e-commerce. I think Magic Spoon's probably almost flip flopped. I don't know. I don't have deep knowledge of their percentages, but that's one that stands out to me, I think.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's an awesome example, and
And I
you're
don't work
right.
for them. I don't,
Oh, sure.
but
No problem.
yeah,
Disclaimer.
disclaimer.
Well, yeah, that makes sense, and yeah, it's very difficult, like you said, especially in the in the food space, to be able to carve a niche like that, and then to have such sales, on the e-commerce side. So,
What's one that
yeah,
stands out to you? Like what's an e-commerce brand that you discovered and kind of patronized recently?
wow. Let's see. That's a great question. I would say, with me, it's tough because, like many people, I'm on Amazon I'm, all the time. And so I don't really wander too much outside of the whole Amazon ecosystem too much, just because I'm super busy and I usually don't have a lot of time to kind of take chances with other brands and doing direct consumer purchases. So
Yeah.
I know a lot of small business owners don't want to hear that, but yeah, personally, I'm trying to think. Was there anything that I've bought recently outside of that ecosystem that
I've
has
like
kind of a?
I
Mhm.
suffer from like e-commerce amnesia where I'm like
Okay.
scrolling or whatever, and I'm like, give it a
Yeah.
shot. And then I completely forget and it shows up and I'm
Yeah.
like, where did this I have like a multi-tool thing, like, or whatever I ordered just like shows up and I completely forgot that I even bought it.
Yeah, exactly. I know how that goes. I've done the same thing. Actually, one brand that's coming to mind is actually a client of ours. Yeah, their narrative is very, very interesting narrative that I think has carried through to their success. The name of the company is CMOS Transformation, and what they create is they provide is an organic superfood. It's kind of like
Okay.
sea moss, but it comes in a
Sounds
gel
delicious.
type. Yeah, you're familiar with it. Okay, yeah.
Sea moss.
Yeah, so they flavored it though, because yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, you hear that, you're like, all right, that can't
Yeah.
be good.
You're
But
going to need
bottom
to add
line,
some vanilla. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They've added flavors to it. The bottom line is it has a variety of health benefits that really have helped weight, can help your hair, your skin, you name it. The founder and owner is kind of a walking testimonial for that. I mean, I think he used to weigh over 400 pounds, something like that.
Well,
And he claims his ability to lose a ton of weight was because of that, his regimen that he had with that, of course, with other things. But, in all of their branding and everything that I've seen, he's kind of front and center there. They actually were on Shark Tank last year, and they did get a deal through for Mark Cuban and
Mark Cuban
Kevin
is
Hart,
just,
actually.
wow.
Yeah,
Too
exactly,
good.
exactly.
Yeah.
He has money to burn. So yeah, they got to deal with them, and they're doing really well. Yeah, they've been
Awesome.
actually using our technology, our affiliate platform, to kind of grow and manage their affiliate software, or their affiliate program, because they've got a ton of influencers and other affiliates that are out there kind of spreading the word. But yeah, with them, that kind of stuck out because everything that I've seen with them, even from their newsletters to their website copy, yeah, that their narrative of those health benefits, they've tied that in kind of really tightly
Yeah.
to the product. And then when people see that and they think about, okay, the founder losing weight, the health benefits he had, it kind of hits home there.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yes,
And it's
yes, that's a great
conveniently one of your clients. That's perfect.
one. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, if I had a, I should have picked.
Well, right. Well, Ryan, it's been awesome talking to you. I definitely have learned a lot. As we've seen, the brand narrative process is something that every business, doesn't matter if you're e-commerce or not, if you're brick and mortar, you got to have a clear brand narrative across all of your channels, your marketing channels. And it has to be consistent, it has to be cohesive in order for that communication to make sense and for people to be able to establish loyalty and get more further engagement. So yeah, it's really all about that. But before we let you go, I always like to switch gears just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
Oh, fun fact. What are some that come to mind that you've had recently that you would think, oh, that is a fun fact?
Yeah, I'll give you some, man. I've had some crazy fun facts. I mean, one of the top ones is I had a gentleman on a few years ago on the podcast, and in a previous life, I guess you could say, he was, I think he's in the marketing field right now. He had a marketing agency, but prior to that, he was an arms dealer, working for the government. Yeah, arms dealer. Yeah, and he was telling me a few stories after the podcast, and yeah, some crazy stuff. Yeah, he's kind of seen a lot of interesting things. If you can imagine being an arms dealer for the government.
I don't know if I'm a top arms dealer.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I'm not doing a good job here. Let's see. I don't know. Here's one fun fact. I really like learning languages, and I'm currently learning 3. So I'm learning French, I'm learning Italian, and I'm learning Mandarin. So,
okay. Wow. Okay.
How are you going about? Je parle un peu le français. 我会说一点中文.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Well, congrats on that. How are you going about doing that? Are you going to school? Are you doing any type of online virtual learning? What are you doing?
Every day I do 30 minutes of each of those languages on an app called Pimsleur. And Pimsleur was named for a guy. I want to say it was Joseph Pimsleur, but I might have his first name wrong. It's a great app. Yeah. And he created a framework by which people learn language through various forms of exposure. And so it's it's very conversational, the way that you learn the language. And you kind of start with like a basic phrase, but each lesson you're kind of building on introducing a new word or a new concept. But so like maybe 80% of each lesson is actually what you did in the last lesson, and 20% of it is new. And so they expose you to a little bit of new phrasing, and then in the next, they expose you to it again, but a little bit more. And then by the third class, they've exposed you. And the next thing you know, you're just kind of doing it. So it's pretty great.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a great fun fact. Now, are you doing all 3 languages at once, or how are you doing? You just kind of juggle?
In school, I studied French. My mother was Belgian and she spoke a little French. So I had like kind of maybe a little bit of a little exposure to it as a kid. And then I started to study Spanish, and then Italian was always just something that I wanted to learn. I got married in Italy a couple of years ago, and I did this class, and like in 5 months, you go from not knowing anything to basically being fluent. The exception is, for me, has been Mandarin. I've done that course probably 3 times, and it's such a different, it's a tonal language. It's just a very different, it's not a romance language like French, Spanish, English. English isn't a romance language, but it has a lot of romance language in it. You can kind of like hear, oh, that sounds a little bit like this. Certainly with Mandarin, the sounds, the whole thing is totally different. So it's taken me a lot longer.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, that's impressive. Yeah, I can't imagine, becoming fluent, like you said, in about 5 months, which I guess is the normal time. Yeah, that's definitely something I'm going to have to check out for sure.
Do it, man.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Ryan. I really appreciate that.
Lastly, still not as good as arms dealer. What?
Basically. Well, before we let you go, if you don't mind sharing one of the best ways for our listeners and viewers to reach you if they want to pick your brain any more about the brand narrative process.
Sure. Yeah. You can go to the website. It's circusmaximus.com, like the thing in Rome, or you can find me at ryan.kutscher on Twitter, and at Ryan Kutscher on Instagram, or you can just email me, ryan@circusmaximus.com.
Okay, that sounds awesome. We'll be sure to have those links in the show notes. Awesome. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, Ryan. We really appreciate having you on the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast.
Thank you, man. It's been awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level, but are tired of wading through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.